Now, good evening, guys. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today, we are going to look at something that is going on in the country, and I think we are going to look at it under the topic why Ruto's government is failing. Now, there are several things that can lead to a government or any government for that matter to fail. But if you consider ours in terms of our government, the government of Kenya, basically, then you find that uh, the downward spiraling of our government is quite extraordinary. It is something that we've never experienced before, especially for a government that has just come into power, or at least is 2 years into power. And so there are various issues that you can come and actually look into and say perhaps these are some of the reasons why this government is failing hard. So for us as citizens, I don't think there is any one individual who is who would go out there and actually support the failing of a government. Then that way you would not be patriotic. So every one of us would want a government that is functioning for everyone else. So, for instance, if we are going to have a government, then that government has to respond to the needs of the people, and that the people have to also feel that the government is indeed working for them. So, that is the number one thing. So, then what should the general public expect from a government are basically provision of public services and then the aspect of security. So security can come in terms of bodily security, privacy. It can come to in terms of protecting one's properties and such like things that are going to affect people, including food security. Because if you are sure about food in your country, then the country becomes more stable. So we have to look at some of these issues and try to pick what are the reasons that have led to this government failing in a manner that it is doing currently. Because really, I'd expected that Ruto was going to have some bit of stability after, removing Rigathi Gachagua as the deputy president. You'd want the government to be able to now, settle down and start to work seriously for what the people want. But we are not seeing that. What we've been seeing in recent times is that politics have just increased. People are still agitating. And I believe our Gen Zs are again organizing. And I think now it is no longer Gen Zs as it were. It is now a cross-generational push against the government. People are now coming against the government and fighting it robustly to either remove it wholesale, and I think that is the intention, or at least destabilize the government so that it is unable to, function properly. So we see agitation in various fronts. It is either through the streets, some, or through the courts or social media. So it is all over. The government is really suffocating. And even bloggers who are supporting the government are struggling to keep up with the kind of pushback they're having from those who oppose the government. Right now, it is very rare to find people supporting any government initiative, however much that initiative would appear to be good in the mind or in the face of it. Now, another thing, it shows you that people have completely lost trust with the government and Ruto as the president of our nation. So there is basically a struggle, and you can see there is this attempt to cultivate this trust back to ensure that the people believe or at least have trust in the government that whatever they are saying they're going to do, they will eventually do them. But as we go by, as we continue this administration, as it goes along, then you realize that that trust is lost and perhaps completely. And we now have former Prime Minister Raila Odinga coming on board and trying to save the government. Today, he did so, coming out strongly trying to provide some direction, giving a press conference of sort, and try to, salvage the government and support the government in some of its initiatives, and also try to, bring back or reassure the nation that the government is stable. So much of these things you'd expect to work in favor of the government, but they do not work in favor of the government. In fact, they only serve to make people angrier. If you watch, if you are a follower of Raila Odinga in various social media accounts, just read the comment sections of whatever is posted in support of President Uhuru Kenyatta, or no, not rather Uhuru, no, not Uhuru Kenyatta, but President Ruto, or in support of any other initiative that the government is taking. You can just see how angry the people are. Now, again, we have to be very careful when you're considering these issues, especially in social media. Social media can really lie to you, in the sense that because not everybody is on social media, but at least they direct. Social media is where you breed, the breeding ground for information and pushback. Mainly now happens in social media. Organization now happens in social media, in Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok. So these organizations or people who push for these things, they are basically on social media. So if you want to see the trends of what is happening right now in Nairobi or wherever, then you go to social media and you realize this is perhaps where the nation is headed. So basically, we do have a complete loss of trust in our government. And therefore, we can conclude that some of these issues are, we can conclude rather that the government is on a downward trajectory. It is really failing bad. But what are some of the reasons, if you consider, that could be leading to this kind of downward spiral? Now, number one is economy. Economy is a major issue, and it is something that is quite difficult to measure. That because for a human being or a common man, economy should relate to his pocket. How much money is he able to make? How much money is he able to keep for himself? And whether or not he is able to sustain his family if he is married. And if he is not, whether or not he is capable of saving in order to acquire property. So it has to relate with personal growth. Therefore, you could say, for argument's sake, that the nation is improving, inflation is going down, but if the common man does not feel this low inflation in his or her pocket, then for him, it is just one thing: the economy is bad. And you cannot convince that person otherwise. He believes the economy is bad because that is what is feeling in his pocket. And if you want to look at other jurisdictions, how this issue has really affected or impacted elections in recent times, the most recent one being the United States, where economists projected that the inflation in the United States was actually coming down, but polls after polls felt that polls after polls, they came to realize that so many people believed that the country, the United States rather, was headed in the wrong direction, and therefore the economy was bad. It wasn't good because they were not feeling the benefit of this low inflation in their pocket. So this has to translate into something tangible. It has to be felt in your pocket. So people are not feeling this low inflation that Ruto government is talking about in their pocket. We're talking about our economy is improving, but nobody is really feeling that in their pocket. So what we are seeing again is we are being overtaxed. So those are some of the things that impact, because you are being overtaxed. So you are paid some amount if you're working for the government or employed. So much of your money, which you'd expect to keep for yourself, go into paying taxes. So you're not keeping so much of your earnings to yourself, but you are giving them away to the government. So you find this friction between the members of the public and the government eroding the trust that should otherwise be between these two entities, that is the public and the state. So that is the number one issue. If you consider that the economy is bad, we cannot say that the government has done well in terms of economy. And I do agree with Ndindi Nyoro when he spoke sometimes back that economy is not something that the government should come out and tell people that our economy is now performing well. One should be able to feel the economic impact of a policies that the government has implemented or put in place. So therefore, you don't need to shout it at the mountaintops or go to rallies and say this is what is happening in our country. No, it should speak for itself. Uh, what we call facts should speak for itself. So you don't need to shout it. It's something that somebody can feel. That I can go to a supermarket and find that 1 kg of unga is actually now 60 bob or even 50, as it used to be sometimes back. So I would feel that. So instead of spending 100 on 1 kg of unga, then I would be spending 50, meaning I would be having an extra 50 bob to spend on some other things. So we do not feel that the economy of the country is right now in a good place. So that is number one. Number two is wanton corruption. And this is not an isolated case for Ruto's government. Every other government we've had since independence have been corrupt. But it appears that corruption in Kenya is so endemic that every succeeding government competes to outdo the preceding government. So when Moi was corrupt, but I think when Kibaki came on board, though he did well with the economy, corruption was so much you could smell it. And then when you thought that that was enough, then Uhuru came on board. It became worse. When Ruto finally came on board, we've had within 2 years billions of money getting lost, billions of money getting lost, or billions of shillings getting lost, and government cannot trace them. We've had government operating like a con, and some of the ministers or ministries being used as a breeding ground for cons. One of that cases is the fertilizer, the fake fertilizer scandal. That happened. You see, if you look at that scandal, the expose, then you realize that it was done within the framework of the government itself, using government institution to push for this scandal. And that was a sad bit. And when that evidence came out in the open, nobody up to now has been held liable for what for that scandal. It went for some hearing or parliamentary hearing, and nothing really came out of it. So one, we have wanton corruption, but nobody is willing at any one point to hold anybody liable for this kind of corruption. So we do have others which were done earlier, or corruptions which were done earlier in other preceding governments, which have not been resolved to date. But we are now breeding others in the government of Ruto, other corruption scandals creeping up in this Ruto government. Another one is KEMSA scandal, or the mosquito net scandal. So this one is the one which knocked the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. It formed a big part of his impeachment. But we'd expect to see, having been thrown out, we'd expect to see various government agencies, such as the EACC, now coming and really investigating these issues seriously in order to bring those who are involved to book. We are not seeing that. Basically, it shows us that whatever happened was just a political exercise, and all these things were merely used as a reason. Oh, they are just saying, no, we don't need to, pursue this. Let that money just go. We don't need to. We don't need to really follow up into this thing, which is now the agencies which are mandated to deal with these issues fail to do so for either political reasons in order to help Ruto survive this now political quagmire that he is in. So it puts us in a very difficult situation and our agencies. So another thing I think which it again is quite sad is some of the stalled projects, because I believe that was also that is also part of corruption, which were being exposed by Morara Kebaso. So these things, one after the other, you find money had been spent, a contractor come to site, and then after a few weeks or months, they leave without really achieving anything or doing anything at all. So that basically is a problem that Kenya has and which must be dealt with decisively if we are to move forward towards development as a country. If we cannot deal with corruption, I assure you, within 20, 30 years, we are going to struggle competing with countries like Tanzania, which are our neighbors here, and which I believe, in terms of our capability, we are more than 10 times better than them. But what they are doing with the meager amounts that they have, they are using their public funds more sparingly and more productively than we are. We are being wasteful, and not only wasteful, we are also stealing from ourselves or from our coffers. So basically, Kenya is a suffocating nation in terms of corruption. So we are saying we do not have money, so we are taxing our people more in order to get this money. And once we get this money, it finds its way into the pockets of a few individuals, and then we claim somehow that there is inflation we are lowering inflation, or the economy of the nation is improving. So it can't be that way. Another one is the loss of 10,000 metric of sugar that happened in a warehouse. So you wonder, how on earth would such amount of sugar just get lost without trace? But it did, you know. So the value of that amount, that impacts the economy. That has a direct impact on the economy. So all these things put together means that the government of Kenya is losing billions of money every day, and those monies cannot be traced. Or if they can't be traced, the agencies that are responsible for tracing them are not doing anything. Basically, what we would call the dereliction of duty. They are not doing anything to bring back or to find or trace those monies and bring them back to the Kenyan people. Now, the other thing that I would wish to add, and I thought this could be uh, a separate topic on why the government is failing, is that the government is picking fights with everybody and anybody. Now, just very recently, we had Catholic bishops coming out and attacking President Ruto on mismanaging the health sector and whatnot. Then we see a battalion of government officers and allied MPs coming to attack these Catholic bishops. So for me, essentially, I don't like our bishops and pastors meddling in politics. The reason why I do not is this. These are the very people who championed the cause of this government against good advice to keep off. They championed the cause of this government, and they've never for once came out and apologized for the people of Kenya. Right now, they want to direct people in another direction. No, I'm not supporting whatever Ruto is doing in the country, but hypocrisy by the Catholic bishops and any other pastor who would come and speak against this government that they told us was God given is crazy. We cannot allow people who told us on authority, in fact, they are saying on authority of God, that this was a government ordained by God Himself. Now coming and turning around to tell us otherwise. So if that is not false prophecy, then I don't know what it is. So for me, I believe they should keep off politics, shut their mouth, and let the people deal with the government in a manner that they deem fit. They should not come out and meddle. Nonetheless, they are meddling. They are coming out. They are speaking against the government, and it should not be lost on us that these people or these churches, especially the Catholic, have a huge following in our country. So I think also they do have interest because Catholic Church owns several, I think schools. One, they also own several health facilities. So what the government is doing in terms of policy impacts them, and therefore they can come and speak. And I believe they could have done it in a different fora, but coming out and attacking the president, though it may sound good at this hour to give traction to them, I don't believe as a personally that whatever they are doing is for the benefit of all Kenyans. They are doing it for their own selfish gains. They're the people who champion for this government. I don't trust them one bit. And I don't trust any other pastor who would come and speak against this government. Let the people do it. Let the people champion their own cause. Your job is to preach and be moral police officers. So you can be a moral police, preach to us what the Bible says and what we are expected to do in whatever circumstance. But don't come and tell us this government is bad or this government is good when you are the one who championed for the cause of this government. But what is the implication of what they are doing to President Ruto? Ruto's government. One, they, with the following that they have eroded further the trust that Ruto's government may have. I do believe that it has really small trust now left. It must be tiny, but I believe so many people have lost trust in the government and in the direction that the government has taken. Now, them coming out and speaking against the government is that they are basically ready to go to war against the governments. Now, an alliance between Ruto government and the church is broken. That's number one. And now they are going head on, and they are now on each other's necks. If you could also see how the government came out so strongly through various people to oppose it, you wonder what is really going on. Some of these things you don't even need to respond to, or if you must, then respond through one channel. There's a government spokesman. Call them out. The government spokesman should come and call them out, and that should be all. But if you have every other allied MP writing whatever they want to write and shouting at the top of their voice, then it doesn't make sense. So it is a fight that it shouldn't take up, but they're taking it up. They're taking a fight with the Gen Zs, they're taking a fight with the church, and they're taking a fight with any other person who would want to oppose them. So it's crazy. The outcome would be the government would continue to fail because it has refused to listen. Now, uh, so this goes to, if you consider every other thing, then it goes to also mismanagement of various sectors of the government or various sectors of the country. So we do have this. I really do not know what to make of Ruto's government in terms of managing our assets as a nation, in terms of managing or providing just leadership uh, and managerial skills in various ministries. So every other thing, you can't really, as a Kenyan, point to any uh, government officer and say he is actually performing. You know, you don't feel them performing. For instance, during Uhuru's time, you could feel Professor Magoa, the late Professor Magoa, really performing. You could feel him performing. Most people may have disagreed with him, but you could feel him doing something. You know, you could feel Matiang'i doing something during Uhuru's regime. So Uhuru may have been incompetent or whatever you would like to call him, or corrupt or something, but he had people who were at least capable, or who at least knew what they were doing with their ministries. Now we have people who seem not to understand anything and everything. All they do is talk and respond to trivialities on social media and to allegations that are brought by bloggers. So we've had ministers like, people like Moses Kuria responding to, during his time when he was a minister or a cabinet secretary, responding to others. We have people like Lee who just is completely out of control. I believe he's a man child who cannot uh, uh, just keep off the keyboard. He responds to everything, and arrogantly so. So the wanton mismanagement of the nation as a whole is crazy. And the inability of the president also to appoint people who can truly execute what he wants or execute his policies is something up to now I do not understand. I don't know whether it's like a self-inflicting harm where you shoot yourself in the foot. And he does that so often. He goes to the least qualified individual. I don't know what metrics he is using to pick these individuals to run these ministries. But whatever metric he's using, the president needs to stop, go back, revise that metric, and see if things are working. He needs not to have people talking to him or telling him in his ears that things are fine, while in fact they are not. Because as he says right now, people are now pushing for demonstrations. You do not want that when just last June there were levels of demonstration that the government could not handle. They need to have a framework of how to deal with the concerns which are being raised. The government needs to have a framework on how to collect views of Kenyans and actually read and listen to those views and act accordingly, if at all they wish to bring back the confidence or win back the confidence of the public. So, proceeding arrogantly is a recipe for disaster. And as they do that, the brewing of discontent would lead to one of the most potent political alliances that will eventually end up defeating this government in 2027. I'm not saying that the government is likely to be defeated in 2027. But if the government or Ruto's government will not stop to listen to the people, then whatever is brewing currently in the country might just consume it. Ladies and gentlemen, that would mark the end of our analysis today. So if you're watching us for the first time, do kindly subscribe to our channel. And if you've been watching us and you're yet to subscribe to our channel, I urge you to do so. Share this content and also leave a comment to see on whether or not you agree with our assessment of the situation. Till next time, have a good evening.